You want some questions? You had some questions?
Yeah,
Go ahead. Go
I
ahead.
just wanted to, two quick things. The first thing, Kurt, I appreciated your comments, and I just, I wanted to get a little bit better sense of, the state puts a lot of incentive into, encouraging state employees to operate, alternative fuel vehicles, ZEVs, et cetera. They give preferential reduced cost parking, access to charging stations, et cetera. Are you guys working on ways that the state can identify lessons we can learn from, the public sector efforts that could translate to the private sector and work with businesses? I'd love to kind of hear a little bit about how, parking incentives work and whether that may work on the private sector side, and what sort of barriers may be out there relating to that.
Kurt Augustine. From the state perspective, I know that the Department of General Services and that agency that they're under are working on that. Caltrans has been very aggressive. And what we have seen in the private sector and with some of these non-fiscal incentives, if you will, is the preference on charging stations. There's actually some federal tax benefits that people can get on parking, that if they're going to use an electric vehicle, they can get those benefits. And so we do see an increased use of that, and it is a motivation for folks. In terms of some real numbers on how that's increasing the percentage of folks who are buying, I don't really have that type of information available, but certainly anecdotally, you can see that it's driving behavior, and you're starting to see a lot of the charging stations are full, and there's some rotating of parking spots, and some of the companies, their employees have to get on a little pool to rotate around, and so while it's a hassle, it's also a positive. There are more of those vehicles out there. So it has been our experience that any of these non-fiscal incentives, even rules on zoning laws and allowing but not necessarily mandating that common interest developments have the opportunity to put in charging stations if they want, letting some of the building code standards make sure that there's at least the option for somebody to put 220 charging in their garage. Those type of things are a huge benefit, and there have been several pieces of legislation over the years that has helped that, and I think there are probably more options too.
Okay, that's helpful. The only question was, I'm trying to get my head around AB 32 and 118 money, and as they may relate to requiring or incentivizing cities and counties, local governments to match state funding with local revenue for transit. I'd just love to get a sense from people about the extent to which there are incentive mechanisms in place for things like Measure R 2.0 in LA and those sorts of transit measures on the local level within AB 32 and 118. Matching funds, that sort of thing. Does anyone?
It's not their.
Probably a better question for the agency. For the agency people. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Thank you. Well, I'll talk to them offline.
Okay.
But one thing that there will be, and this is sort of a related issue, there should be a solicitation coming out quite soon focused on zero-emission buses, and to the extent that the agencies are looking to buy new buses, there will be state help for those purchased. But yeah, in terms of transit operations, that's not my area.
There's like a federal movement to turn all the buses into zero-emission buses. I think they have a schedule they have established nationally.
And they recently put out a big solicitation called the no or low emission bus incentives, and a lot of those are coming to California.
Maybe we can get some more information on that. Thank you. Bob?
Yeah.
I'm going to take off.
I get, yeah, you yeah, my driver.
Now I'd like to open up the public comment period. If folks could come in, identify themselves and whom they're with, or if they're just representing themselves, and then let us know what you liked or you didn't like.
Keith Dunn here on behalf of the Self-Help Counties Coalition, and I'm jumping in front as the first speaker is helping one of your panelists down the row there, so take advantage of that opportunity. I just want to talk really briefly about one of the, Self-Help Counties were, in Measure R was brought up, but we're the principal partners with the state on building and delivering a lot of these programs. So I just think it's critical that we and as the senator mentioned, are doing things to incentivize compliance with the policies that's coming down from the state. Our mandate is keeping the faith of the voters. You know, we go out and get a 2/3 endorsement, working with the communities that put together these priority project lists. And we need to make sure that the policies that continue to come from the state are helping the local regions comply with those policies and not doing things that impede their ability to keep those promises. And future policies change, but we need to make sure that the current expenditure plans that have been passed and endorsed by the local communities are allowed to move forward, and they're being given every opportunity to comply with the policies, either through incentives or other programs, but not putting more additional burdens on them as they've already been passed and are making an effort to be complied with. So that'd be my final comment, and thank you very much.
That makes sense. Next.
Hi, I'm Jeannie Wardwaller. I'm with the Safe Routes to School National Partnership, and I'm here on behalf of a coalition of active transportation groups in the state that have worked really closely on the active transportation program, which has been talked about several times today. Because there's been lots of discussion, I'm not going to talk too much about what that program does and its many benefits. Instead, I just want to focus on what our coalition is asking for this year, and that's more funding for the program. We have 120 organizations in the state that have signed on to a platform. I have a handout, and I'll leave it with you, that has a lot more detail. But I want to highlight that in the first cycle of the active transportation program, there was $800 million in projects that were not funded. So we have those projects sitting on the shelf, ready to go, ready to benefit communities. In addition to more funding, we're asking that green infrastructure, things like trees, landscaping, things that make active transportation more comfortable, be better integrated into this program. We'll also enhance the climate benefit of the program. And also, we want to make sure that the portion of the program that's benefiting disadvantaged communities is more effective. So I'll leave my handout. We'd love your support. Thank you.
Next, please.
Jay McKeeman, California Independent Oil Marketers Association. We're local oil. We provide the fuel and lubricants from the refiner to the customer. So our members are small businesses, typically family-owned, all over the state. I'm here to try to provide a little bit of broader perspective on exactly what is being attempted here. This is really an unprecedented set of activities and programs going forward in terms of the complexity and the potential economic impact to consumers and California residents. There's a lot of moving parts, as you've heard today. And frankly, from our perspective, from the small business perspective, things are getting so complicated that the regulators don't know what's going on, and it's certainly hard for them to communicate to the regulated community what's going on. So we're here to urge caution going forward. We're getting to a point, some tipping points, I believe, in the regulatory programs that are going to create some major problems going forward. I want to make sure that we all understand that what we're doing is moving from basically a competitive fuels market to a controlled monopoly energy transportation market. Right now we have transportation companies, fuel companies competing amongst each other for space and for product sales in the transportation supply, energy supply situation. If we go to electric-based transportation, zero emission equals electric vehicles, that you're moving to the utilities as the transportation energy providers. We don't have space in that area. We are legally prohibited from reselling electricity. So this transition discussion is something that we don't see really full-blown, in the sense that we're going to be here for a little while, but the grand plan is basically to take us out. And that's how we see this, these programs. There's I just want people to understand that reality, that we're moving from a competitive marketplace to a utility-provided transportation energy system. I think one perspective I could add is that as you walked precincts during your election and you saw the vehicle mixes that were out there, do you really think that there's going to be, as the car makers indicated, this wholesale transition of vehicles from petroleum fuels to electricity in 10 to 15 years? I don't think it's going to happen. I think we need to take our foot off the pedal a little bit, make sure we understand where we're going, what we're doing, and make sure that all businesses are accounted for in terms of the transition of the state from petroleum products to electricity. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for sticking it out. I appreciate the commitment and dedication. Just wanted to start out by saying that I'm Michael Shaw with the California Manufacturers and Technology Association, and CMTA is committed to doing its part on climate change policy. Good efficiency measures are good for business in California, are good for manufacturers, so we're committed to doing our part on that. I did want to note manufacturers, I think as we all well know, and probably goes without stating in this building for all businesses, very sensitive to costs. So rising costs in fuel prices, rising costs in energy prices do have a significant impact. And it is having an impact currently in California. As we see manufacturing jobs come back from overseas, we're seeing that growth occurring in many other parts of the country and not quite as much in California. We're working on updating the numbers but at this point, but it's safe to say that California is well underperforming its gross domestic share of the economy related to manufacturing in terms of attracting new investments. Somewhere around 1.5% or 2% of new investments in manufacturing are occurring in California for roughly 11% of the GSP or gross state product that's related to manufacturing. Additionally, we're not seeing the job growth occur in California. We're seeing roughly 1% or so of job growth in California manufacturing versus roughly 7% in the rest of the country on average. So that's all to say that this is some context in which all these discussions are taking place. We think that cap and trade provides a holistic approach to the issue of reducing greenhouse gas emissions and reducing the impacts of climate change. The sector-specific approaches that are continuing or coming back, low carbon fuel standard and others, are cutting up, dividing that up and really muddying the waters, we believe. We believe that the cap and trade approach as a whole, incorporating electrical generation and the like, would be a much better approach, I should say, than the alternatives. And it's certainly combining the two creates a difficult situation for manufacturers and all businesses in the state of California. We also want to note that further analysis needs to be done. And I think as important as the analysis itself is that the entities responsible for doing that are held accountable for carrying it out. We do know that ARB is behind on a number of analyses that have been promised or required of them. The leakage analysis being high on that list. That is over a year past due to this body. And there needs to be some accountability in that. We need to know, as Ms. Reheis-Boyd said earlier, we need to know where we are before we plot our steps forward. And my wife, being a librarian, I'll borrow a quote from John Dewey, who said, arriving at one goal is the beginning of another. So as we approach 2020 and the culmination of AB 32 policies in particular, and we're already looking ahead, and vision and planning are good, but we need to know what the impact has been to date, what it cost, and the steps it took to get here before we look at going too far forward. So as we look to the post-2020 world, the main point here is let's not look so far past that we are ignoring the costs we paid already to date, ignoring the work that has been done. But we do appreciate, the focus of this legislature in its oversight role, especially in the Senate, under Pro Tem De Leon and having committees do a lot of that work. So we look forward to participating in those settings as well to make sure that the accountability is in place for what's being done as we look to the future and going ahead. Manufacturing is a significant employer in California. We hope that it becomes more significant of manufacturing, frankly, of all stripes. It can be everything from manufacturing fuels to furniture to solar panels and electric vehicles. There's lots of opportunity and lots of room in the manufacturing tent. Thank you.
Next.
Hi, my name is Bonnie Holmes-Jen, and I'm a Senior Director for Air Quality and Climate Change with the American Lung Association in California. And the American Lung Association and health organizations are strongly behind California's leadership in moving away from dirty petroleum fuels to clean, low-carbon transportation. And the American Lung Association in California has been a longtime supporter of AB 32 and key programs that you've discussed today, the Zero Emissions Vehicle Program, the Advanced Clean Cars, Low Carbon Fuel Standard, the Energy Commission's AB 8, and I'm glad you had a robust discussion about these programs. And we're engaged in all these areas because transportation policy is health policy. And the book of the pollution that comes from the book of pollution that's contributing to asthma attacks, contributing to respiratory illnesses, premature death, and heart attacks and strokes is from transportation. And we've done a lot of research on health effects. And just looking at passenger vehicles alone, we know that annually we're racking up almost $15 billion in health costs, and of course more when we look at heavy-duty sector. And we can dramatically reduce these costs. But we have a long to-do list to do that, to reduce these costs and to ensure that children can grow up without having abnormal lung development. And as you've seen the recent research, we know that by reducing the pollution in the air, we are seeing results in children's health. And on that to-do list, we need to move forward. We need to set the midterm and long-term greenhouse gas reduction targets. That's very critical. And we need to stay the course and strengthen our signature programs in California, like the Zero Emission Vehicle Program, which has had tremendous success, like the Low Carbon Fuel Standard and Fuels Under the Cap. And these programs are becoming more effective as more states are adopting these programs. And we've seen progress just last week in Oregon, reaffirming their low carbon fuel standard. We have 10 states, of course, have adopted the Zero Emission Vehicle Program. And along with these programs, we need to continue increasing the incentive funding that's available. The low carbon transportation, we support increasing the funding through the Low Carbon Transportation Fund, including for clean freight. And the discussion about active transportation is extremely important. And we support the increase that Ms. Ward-Waller asked you about today also. And we also need to pay more attention to public education and messaging. People want to invest in cleaner options. When they understand the health and air quality benefits, they want to be part of the solution, but they need to understand more about the options that are available. And we need more state effort to educate the public about the effort that we're involved in to make this transition and the tremendous co-benefits that we will experience. Just two more points that we need to ensure that our alternative fuel and transportation technologies that we pursue are the cleanest from both the criteria pollution and a greenhouse gas perspective. And I know Mr. Corey and others have made that point, and I just wanted to underscore it, that this 90% reduction in smog-forming pollutants that we need to achieve in the South Coast is a huge task. And we need similar reductions in San Joaquin Valley. So we still need to keep a focus on both the GHG and criteria pollutants, and that means we need to keep the pressure on, as we always have, for the cleanest possible alternative fuels and technologies. We need to keep moving and pushing forward toward electricity, fuel cells, and advanced biofuels and biogas from renewable sources. And just finally, of course, we need to keep focusing our attention on achieving this transformation in disadvantaged communities and those vulnerable populations that are already suffering from asthma and respiratory illnesses and disproportionately affected by smog and soot. And the San Joaquin Valley is, of course, a key area of focus. Thanks so much for your time.
Do we have other speakers? Okay, thank you very much. We're adjourned.
Close.